I used to work the graveyard shift in a convenience store during college. I usually had a lot of downtime, as it was rare for anyone to come in past 11 p.m. or so. Even though I was there by myself for much of the night, the store was in a good neighborhood, so I never really worried about a robbery. Nothing remotely creepy happened either, at least, until one night. It was a typical Tuesday in late fall, the kind where the wind howls outside and rattles the glass doors just enough to keep you on edge. I'd been stocking shelves to kill time, listening to some old rock playlist on my phone since the store's radio had crapped out weeks ago. The clock on the wall ticked past 11:45, and I was already thinking about my post-shift ritual, grabbing a soda and heading back to my dorm for a few hours of sleep before class. That's when the first odd thing happened. The automatic doors slid open with their usual chime, but no one came in right away. I leaned over the counter, peering into the dimly lit parking lot. It was empty except for my beat-up Honda and a couple of stray leaves swirling in the breeze. After a few seconds, I shrugged it off. Maybe a gust of wind had triggered the sensor. But then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate ones, crunching on the gravel just outside. They stopped and the door stayed open, letting in a chill that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Hello?" I called out, trying to sound casual. There was no response. The doors finally hissed shut after their timeout, and I told myself it was nothing. It was probably just a raccoon or some kid messing around. I went back to stacking chips, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The security camera feed on the little monitor behind the counter showed nothing unusual, just the empty aisles and the flickering fluorescent lights. Then, at midnight exactly, the phone rang. It wasn't my cell, but the store's landline, which hardly ever got used except for the occasional delivery confirmation. It was so unexpected I glitched out for a second, and finally picked it up on the third ring. "Quick Mart, how can I help you?" There was only static at first, but then a woman came on, faint and breathless. Is he there? The man with the red jacket?" I frowned. Ma'am, this is a convenience store. Who are you looking for?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she told me to lock the doors. "Don't let him in. He's not what he seems." Then the line went dead. I stared at the receiver, my heart picking up speed. Was this some prank call, or a wrong number? I dialed *69 to trace it, but it just beeped an error. Shaking my head, I hung up and glanced at the clock. It was now 12:02. The wind had picked up again, whistling through the cracks in the door frame. Not 2 minutes later, the doors opened again, and this time, someone did walk in. He was a middle-aged guy, maybe in his 40s, wearing a faded red jacket over a hoodie. His face was pale, eyes shadowed under the brim of a baseball cap. He didn't look at me. Instead, he just shuffled straight to the cooler in the back, grabbed a bottle of water, and headed back to the counter. Up close, I noticed his hands were trembling slightly as he pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. "Rough night?" I asked, trying to make small talk while ringing him up. The man nodded vaguely, his voice a low mumble. "You could say that. Storm's coming." He glanced over his shoulder at the doors, then back at me. "You alone here?" I didn't like the way he said that. "Yeah, just me." I handed him his change, but he didn't take it right away. Instead, the man leaned in closer, his breath smelling faintly of mint and something metallic. "Be careful. Things aren't always what they seem at this hour." Before I could even respond, he pocketed the change and walked out, disappearing into the darkness beyond the parking lot lights. The doors closed behind him, and I just stood there, replaying the phone call in my head. Was it a coincidence? Or was this the guy she was warning me about? I tried to brush it off and busied myself mopping the floor near the entrance. But as I worked, I kept glancing outside. The lot was still empty. Then, about 12:15, I heard it, a soft tapping on the glass. I looked up, and there he was again, the man in the red jacket, standing just outside the doors. He wasn't trying to come in. Instead, he was just staring at me, his face pressed close to the pane, fogging it with his breath. His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. My stomach dropped. I really didn't want to, but I knew I had to say something. "We're still open," I shouted, pointing at the sign. But the man didn't move. The automatic sensor should have opened the doors for him, but it didn't. He just tapped again, slower this time, like he was testing something. I slowly backed away from the counter, grabbing the phone to call the cops. But as I dialed 911, the lights flickered once, then went out completely. The store plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the emergency exit sign in the back. In that red glow, I saw his silhouette through the glass. He was smiling now, a wide, unnatural grin that didn't reach his eyes. The power surged back on after a few seconds, and when the fluorescence buzzed to life, he was gone. No trace of him in the lot. I finished the call to the police, my voice shaking as I explained what just happened. They said they'd send a patrol car, but it might take 20 minutes since it was a slow night. I wasn't taking any chances. I locked myself in the back office, heart pounding, watching the camera feed. That's when I noticed something on the replay from earlier. When the man first came in, the footage showed him entering, but there was no shadow under his feet, even under the bright store lights. And when he left, the doors opened, but the gravel outside didn't crunch like it had when I thought I heard footsteps before. The cops arrived around 12:40, checked the perimeter, and found nothing. No footprints, no signs of tampering. They chalked it up to a weirdo passing through and advised me to keep the doors locked if I felt unsafe, even though policy said otherwise. I ended up quitting the next day, but sometimes, late at night in my apartment, I swear I hear that tapping on my window. And when I peek through the blinds, there's no one there, but the glass is always fogged. It's just like someone just breathed on it from the outside. I had a summer internship after my junior year in college, which was at another university several states away. My academic advisors recommended getting experiences at different places, and honestly I was up for a change of scenery. That doesn't really matter for the story though. What does matter is that I was trying to drive overnight to make it back to my apartment. I felt wide awake and my plan was going smoothly, up until midnight when I sensed a migraine might be coming on. I rarely got them anymore, but did not want to risk getting one while driving at night. Therefore, I started looking for a motel, somewhere I could basically just crash. The highway was desolate at that hour, just endless stretches of cornfields under a cloudy sky that blocked out the stars. My GPS showed a few options, but they were pretty far off the route. Finally, about 20 minutes past midnight, I spotted a flickering neon sign for the Starlight Motel tucked behind a cluster of overgrown trees. It looked like it had seen better days, peeling paint on the office, a vending machine with a busted glass front, but the vacancy light was on, and that's all I really cared about. I pulled off into the gravel lot, which had only one other car parked, an old sedan with tinted windows. The office door jingled as I entered, and behind the counter was an older man, probably in his 60s, with wiry gray hair and a faded name tag that read Earl. He glanced up from a crossword puzzle, his eyes squinting like he wasn't used to visitors. "Room for one?" he asked, his voice gravelly from what smelled like years of cigarette smoke. "Yeah, just for the night," I said, handing over my card. "Got a headache brewing, need to sleep it off." The man nodded slowly, processing the payment without much small talk. "Room 7, end of the row, quiet spot. Here's your key, old school, no fancy cards here." He slid a metal key across the counter, attached to a plastic tag shaped like a star. As I turned to leave, he added, "If you hear any noises, it's just the pipes. Building's old." I thanked him and headed out, the cool night air hitting me as I walked to the room. The motel was a single-story L-shape, with my door facing away from the highway. Inside, it was basic, a lumpy bed, a small TV on a dresser, and a bathroom that could use a deep clean. There was no Wi-Fi, but I wasn't planning to browse anyway. I popped a couple of painkillers from my bag, changed into sweats, and lay down, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The migraine aura was fading, thankfully, and exhaustion hit me fast. I drifted off around 1 a.m., the distant hum of trucks on the highway lulling me to sleep. What woke me wasn't a sound at first, it was a feeling. That prickly sensation on the back of your neck, like someone's eyes are on you. I checked my phone and saw it was only 2:47 a.m. It was way too early for dawn, and the room was pitch black except for the red glow of the clock radio on the nightstand. Then I heard it, a soft scraping, like nails dragging lightly across wood. It was coming from under the bed! I froze, telling myself it was probably a mouse or the building settling. But the scraping continued, rhythmic and deliberate, stopping every few seconds as if something was listening to me. My heart began pounding, the migraine threat long forgotten. I leaned over the edge slowly, phone flashlight in hand, and shone it underneath. I saw nothing but dust bunnies and an old suitcase zipper peeking out from the shadows. Wait, suitcase? The room was supposed to be empty. I yanked it out, my hands shaking. It was a cheap black roller bag, zipped shut but bulging slightly. The scraping had stopped the moment I touched it. Against my better judgment, I unzipped it a crack and recoiled at the smell, like damp earth and something metallic. Inside were clothes, a shirt that looked just like the one I'd packed in my own bag, jeans folded neatly, even a college ID card with my face on it. But the name was smudged out. What the hell? Panic started to set in. I grabbed my keys and bolted for the door, not even bothering with shoes. But the knob wouldn't turn. It was locked from the outside, the deadbolt engaged in a way that shouldn't be possible with my key. I pounded on the door like a madman, yelling for help, but the only response was that scraping again, louder now, coming from the bathroom. The mirror cabinet was ajar, and as I approached, I saw movement in the reflection. Not mine, but a shadowy figure crouched low, mimicking my steps. I spun around and saw nothing was there. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone too. My phone had no signal now, not even emergency. I tried the window, but it was nailed shut under layers of paint. That's when the clock radio crackled to life on its own, static giving way to a whispery voice. Stay, just crash here. It was Earl's voice, but distorted somehow, and looping like a recording. I smashed the window with the lamp, cutting my hand in the process, and climbed out into the night. My car was still there, but as I sprinted toward it, I glanced back. The other car in the lot was gone, and the office light was off. I peeled out onto the highway, blood dripping onto the wheel, and didn't stop until I hit a 24-hour diner 30 miles away. The waitress there patched me up and called the cops when I told her what happened. The police checked the motel the next morning. It was real, all right, but Earl? No record of him working there. The actual manager said the place had been under renovation. It had been closed for weeks, with no guests even allowed. Room 7's door was wide open, my stuff still inside, but the suitcase was gone. They found scratches under the bed, deep grooves in the wood, like someone, or something, had been clawing to get out. I never drove overnight again. To this day I can't shake the thought that whatever was in that room knew me. I also get the sense that it was waiting for me specifically. And what if it followed? I dated this woman named Angela for a few months in my early 20s, and things started off perfect. Angela was very outgoing and had her own apartment and a good job. After our first couple dates, we text each other and joke around a bit after getting back home. One thing I picked up on relatively early was that Angela would never text right at midnight. Seriously, there was this window from about 11:50 to 12:30 where she wouldn't return any texts or calls. I'm not even sure why I picked up on that in the first place, but in the beginning I didn't really give it a second thought. As we got closer though, it started to bug me. We'd be mid-conversation sometimes, sharing memes or talking about our days, and then poof, radio silence right around that time. If I sent something at 11:55, no reply until maybe 12:35, and she'd pick up like nothing happened, with no explanation. I asked her about it once over dinner, trying to keep it light. Hey, you got some secret midnight ritual or something? You always ghost me around then. Angela laughed it off, twirling her pasta. Oh, that's just when I wind down. No screens after 11:50, helps me sleep better, doctor's orders. It sounded reasonable enough. She was into wellness stuff, yoga and all that. But it didn't make sense why she'd pick her phone back up around 12:30. Her eyes also flicked away for a second, and I caught a nervous edge in her voice. Still, I just let it go, as I really didn't have any reason to suspect this was something more at this point. A couple weeks later, things began to escalate in my head. We'd been dating steadily, spending nights at each other's places, but she always made sure I wasn't at hers on certain evenings. It would always be girls' night, or early meeting tomorrow, or something else. One Friday, after a late movie, I dropped her off at 11:30. We kissed goodnight, and I drove away, but curiosity gnawed at me. What was she hiding? Was there someone else? I decided to circle the block and park down the street from her apartment building, feeling like a creep but unable to stop myself. It was 11:45 now, the street quiet under the orange glow of street lamps. Her window was on the second floor, curtains partially drawn but with a gap where I could see her living room light on. I hunkered down in my car, watching. At 11:50 exactly, she appeared in the window, phone in hand, probably checking my last text. Then she set it down on the coffee table, face up, and walked out of view. The light stayed on, and there was no movement for a while. I waited, and the clock on my dash ticked to 11:55, and then midnight. That's when it started. A faint glow, not from the lamp, but something bluish pulsing from deeper in the apartment, like a TV screen, but erratic. I strained my eyes. Angela reappeared, but she wasn't alone. There was a figure behind her, tall and shadowy, standing unnaturally still in the hallway. At first I thought it was a coat rack or something, but then it moved, mirroring her steps as she paced the room. She seemed to be talking, her mouth moving animatedly, but no sound carried to the street. The figure didn't appear to respond. Instead, it just followed, always a step behind, its outline blurring at the edges like smoke. My pulse raced. Was this an intruder? I grabbed my phone to call her, but remembered her no screens rule. Would she even pick up? At 12:05, she stopped pacing and faced the figure directly. She raised her arms, like in a hug, and the shadow, it enveloped her. It didn't seem violent. Instead, it was almost tender, merging into her silhouette until there was just one shape again. The blue glow intensified, and I swear her eyes flashed in the window, locking right onto where I was parked, even though I was hidden in the dark. I froze, phone halfway to my ear. She couldn't see me, could she? But then my phone buzzed, a text from her. "Why are you watching?" My blood went cold. I hadn't told her I was coming back. I ended up starting the car, tires squealing as I peeled out, heart hammering. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I saw her at the window, still alone now, waving slowly. I decided to break things off the next day via text. I just couldn't face her. Angela acted confused and said I was overreacting to her meditation sessions. But I started noticing things after that. My own text to friends would go unanswered in that same midnight window, like the habit had spread. One night, alone in my apartment at 12:15, I felt it, a presence behind me, cold breath on my neck, mirroring my every move. I spun around, and there was nothing there. But in the mirror across the room, my reflection smiled back, even as I screamed. Whatever Angela was sharing during those hours, it wasn't just silence, it was contagious.